make a point to reference our point and our goal here. We've got some administrative business. We were making Ernie put his state plan stuff at the front of the meeting on purpose. If you remember the state code, that's what our primary objective is. Secondary objective is to help the agency with the recycling program and the grants program. So that's kind of second on the list. And then we get into our other things that kind of purpose for the order of operations, our agenda. So,
hey, Michael, just let me just put in the plug here too, that we have a public comment period at the end of our session. So if you could withhold any comments that you have until that session. If you have questions and you're a guest who's participating virtually, if you just chat those in, we will read those off to our speakers so that we can get those answered.
Thank you, Ernie. With that, Matt, can you do a roll call for us? I believe you're doing it.
Sure will. Yeah, Chuck DeYonker.
I am here. Thank you.
Commissioner O. Jennifer Fenderbach.
I'm here virtually.
Paul Weiss.
Here.
Beth Biggins-Raymer.
Here.
Marcy Kress.
Here.
Kelly Bensman.
Here.
Kimberly McConville. Michael Deneen.
Here.
Steve Sargent.
Here.
Alex Bernke.
Here.
Brian Winter.
Here.
John Daly.
Here.
Okay. Quorum is present.
All right. Ernie sent out the minutes for our April 20th meeting. They've been reviewed. Any comments, questions, concerns, criticisms?
Chairman, I make a motion we approve the April 20th, 2022 meeting minutes. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. EPA update.
Yes, we have some good news about the drop-off anti-contamination campaign. Matt, not to put you on the spot, but can you just tell them where we are at this point in terms of that project?
Like I said, there was good news. I think I wasn't here at the last meeting. I think at that point in time, maybe the announcements made that we did get the approval for additional funding. But then we had to get approval from the director, and that we were successful in our presentation. We're in the process of getting all the documents signed and making that official, and then starting to work with the recycling partnership on sort of an outreach plan on how to get the word out to the potential applicants and finalizing the application process, etc. That timeline is to get all that done by the end of the year, so then things will actually be sort of implemented on the ground in 2023.
Thank you, Matt. We're quite pleased with that. So we appreciate all of everybody's efforts in getting that through, and we really look forward to kicking that off and seeing what happens with it. We have started I'll talk about this briefly here, but I'm going to touch on it again when I do my presentation. One of the strategic goals in the state plan for the state was to work on fiber recovery, trying to get more recovered in the state. So we've kind of kicked off an effort to improve cardboard recovery in Ohio. We've had some initial discussions with Steve has been involved. We are going to be reaching out to Pratt Industries, Greif, and International Paper to gauge their interest in participating. We have a consultant named Miles Cohen who has formerly worked at Pratt, who's helping us kind of coordinate that and get his contacts with the companies. Miles asked for a small stipend to cover his expenses for participating, and Aswato has generously agreed to pay that stipend. They just agreed to that this week. So we won't spend any of Aswato's money until we know that something's going to happen. So that's why they're reaching out to the big three companies just to see if they're willing to play. So we don't really know much more than that at this point, but we are working towards that. So just keep your ears open. We'll be working more on that. Michelle, are you on? Michelle Mountjoy? Okay.
I'm here. I'm here.
Michelle's going to give us her quick rural update. Thank you, Michelle.
Right.
Okay, quick rule update. I'm going to go in process order just so I don't confuse you all where things are in the process. So I'm going to start with a couple of rules that are in the beginning of the process. So those would be the beneficial use rules and the solid waste transfer facility rules. Those recently went out for ESO, and actually the ESO period is over for those two rule packages, but I wanted to put them on your radar because you'll start to see more rule discussions, more activity on those rule sets, specifically beneficial use probably first. Next in the process, we had a couple of rule packages that did go out for interested party comment in the last 6 months or so, and those were the Ernie's fee rules. And we got a handful of comments on those, and so we are still working through trying to respond to those comments. Last month, we had the solid waste incinerator and solid waste energy recovery facility rules go out for interested party. And we didn't get any comments on those. Those are pretty antiquated rules, and we proposed moving them over and reorganizing them. And but we don't currently have any solid waste incinerators or energy recovery facilities. We just have one that had infectious waste treatment facility with notation to incinerate. So next are the ones that are closer to the end of the process. We have the processing facility rules, specifically the CNDD co-located processing facility rules. Those are the processing facilities that are located adjacent within the property boundary of a landfill, of a CNDD landfill. Those rules went to JCAR this week, and they finish up their JCAR jurisdiction next week. So we're looking to final file those rules at the end of next week, targeting Friday of next week with an effective date of July 4th. So those are going to be coming up real soon for any of you who are, who have CNDD processing facilities, co-located processing facilities. And the standalone processing facility rules, those are the individual ones. They've been effective for a little bit now, but in case you weren't aware, EPA has a webinar for the permitting and licensing requirements for those facilities. And that webinar is tomorrow. So you can register if you go to our website, our homepage, there's a link, a big banner. So you can register and listen in on that webinar. Other than that, I just have a couple more things that are coming down the pike are, so things to keep put on your radar. Solid waste landfill operation rule, that's going to come up soon. We're starting to gather some ideas on how to make changes to that rule. Also, scrap tires. Those we're getting real close to an interested party draft on a set of scrap tire rules, and those are going to look like a big change because we took them out of 27 and we're going to make them a brand new chapter. So it's going to look really big and scary, but we're going to do our best to educate everyone on where we targeted changes to the scrap tire rules. And then finally, infectious waste rules will come up in probably the second half of the year as well. So I threw a lot out there, but I wanted to make sure you were all aware in case any of your pet rule sets are on that list. If you have any questions, let me know.
And Jeff, do we have a count on the webinar that Michelle mentioned that occurs tomorrow? Do we have a count on?
The last number we have is 120 people had registered for it. I'll have to get an update on that though.
Thank you.
Do you know if they scheduled the next one yet?
We have some tentative dates, but it's not set in stone yet. Yeah.
So for the members of the health departments, SWATO, that particular rule package that's going into effect for CND processing facilities is going to affect a lot of people that have no idea what they're doing when it comes to regulations, or probably don't. It's going to surprise a lot of people. Any outreach that you can do to individuals that may be affected in your area, get them to watch that webinar. I believe there's some tentative dates that are out there to have another scheduled meeting before those rules go effective so that people can apply ahead of time. There's a lot of pieces and parts to that they're not aware of, because it's not just the materials management side of things. It can be air, water, whole 9 yards and everything, which they may or may not have. So it's going to be an interesting rollout, but the agency is doing a lot of outreach and effort to make it as easy as they can. But I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
Yeah, and to tack on to what Mike said, so those standalone rules, they are currently effective. They were effective in April, but they have 6 months to start getting their permit applications in. So I think that's what Mike was trying to point out, that they have this grace period to get stuff together, and they might be unsure of how to do that.
Thank you, Michelle. That was absolutely correct.
No problem.
Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome. I saw in the chat, I saw it pop
Wait.
up that someone asked for a link to the webinar. So I'll go ahead, and once I turn off my camera, I'll set that in there.
We have a question here. Alex Bernke has a question for you.
Hey,
Sure.
Michelle, can you just give a very quick overview of some of the scrap tire changes that can be a part of this rule?
And so, I'll start with my disclaimer that, since the director hasn't signed off on this package yet, all of them are still in flux. But really we're going to we want to reorganize, like I said, take things out of Chapter 27. If you're familiar with the scrap tire rules, most of you are, probably more so than I am. We have a lot of requirements for different facilities bunched in together. So we really want to just parse out those requirements. So our proposal is for it to look a lot like the composting rules, where you see, a class 1 section, a class 2 section, and so on and so forth. With the scrap tire rules, we're looking at a section for our transporters, a section for our recovery facilities, for our storage facilities and collection facilities, so that you can easily find, or your facilities can easily find what they're looking for. As far as subsequent changes, we tried not to make too many subsequent changes. We're looking at, I would say the biggest one we're looking at recovery facilities, and we're trying to see right now we haven't made a determination, but we're assessing if the financial assurance for recovery facilities is still where it needs to be. We're also looking at, along the financial assurance lines, we did some tweaking to financial assurance for scrap tire transporters, because as you know, that's a flat rate, $20,000, and the rule was forcing transporters to establish a standby trust. Through our experience, we're finding out that it's costing these transporters a lot of money to establish trust funds, standby trust funds for $20,000, and a lot of money to maintain them. And often it's more than $20,000. And so a lot of times these owners and operators are also just neglecting to maintain these mechanisms because they're so expensive. And so for a set $20,000 financial assurance, we're going to have a new approach on how they can maintain that financial assurance. And we're also going to be just ratcheting down on the mechanisms that are available to them, because a lot of the mechanisms in our financial assurance rules aren't used by scrap tire transporters, like a corporate guarantee. They're not going to use a corporate guarantee. They're not going to use a financial test, but also to try to discourage them from using ones that just end up being problematic. Most notably, like, insurance is kind of tough for them sometimes. So we're gonna do stuff like that. Other than that, let me know if you would like some more changes. I can try to dig some up in my brain.
Thank you for that, Michelle. You may or may not know this. I think the chairman knows this, and Chet does as well. My organization represents the vast majority of tire retailers. We also represent some manufacturers who obviously interface with the transporters quite a bit. So I would just offer, if we can be helpful and be a resource as you work through that rules package, and we want to obviously help the director as well, that offer is certainly on the table.
Absolutely. Yeah, Alex, I think I do recognize your name. Shannon, I think, has brought it up to me a few times, and she's been in contact with you, I believe.
Perfect. Thank you.
Michelle, could you make sure to send these notices of review, and in particular, the webinar tomorrow, to Michelle Ball? She's the head of Asuado, and she can disseminate that through her list. So we ensure that we're getting all the feedback that, we can.
Michelle,
I can
if you send that to me,
totally.
I'll forward it out for you.
Okay, and I guess I will mention to everybody, just so you stay up to date. Oh, if you aren't already signed up for our listserv, that is the best way to get, because I have a lot of people that I send things to. And so sometimes, unless Ernie reminds me to send it to like a Swano, I might not, that might not be on my radar. So our listserv, we send out listserv messages for all of our trainings, all of our rules. Whenever our rules go out to any step in the process, we send out an email notification. So and we have certain lists for certain rule packages. So if you're only interested in scrap tires like Alex might be, we have a certain scrap tire list so that he won't be getting notifications for landfills if that's not what he wants to receive. So that's also, I'll put a link to the listserv in the notes as well, in the meeting chat, as well as the webinar registration link. Just it's really easy in that way. If we don't do our due diligence and get you the information, then you still get the information.
And I'll send out the listserv information to MAC members also, in addition to having it in the chat.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, Ernie, you'll send that out as well to.
Oh, well, Aswato, I'm going to,
Aswato.
yes.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
The last update is just to remind everybody that our next meeting is August 17th, and the governor's order that allows us to meet virtually will expire at the end of this month. So any participation virtually in the future will just mean you don't have the right to vote on actions.
Are we allowed back in your office, or are we going to stay here?
We're allowed back in the office. It's whether you want to go back to our office.
Do you like this location or do you like this?
Speaking personally, it's a heck of a lot easier to get in and out of. I'm seeing a lot of nodded heads here.
It's cheaper because we don't have to pay the parking.
Yeah.
That's one benefit. We don't have to go and find an open garage, and it's easier to not go downtown all the way in, so.
Well,
I mean, granted, we are on the outskirts, in my opinion, but it's easier, we're closer to highways.
Well, the County Commissioners Association has been a very good friend of ours. And so I think what we can do is I'll talk with Ernie and we'll look at a schedule moving out so that we can get on their schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, their events would take precedence over this meeting, but we'll see if we can't make that happen.
That would be wonderful.
despite my best efforts to have them not allow me back in here again because of IT issues, they still accommodate me. So,
They have better IT than you guys have the agency.
what? Oh, our IT people are pretty good. It's me who's not
Well, I
capable.
guess I should say the toys that they have.
Yes,
are
correct. Yes, that's right. That's right.
Ernie, you're up.
Yes. I'm not touching anything, as you can see. So I'm waiting for Jeff to load up my presentation, then I'll do it. So I think several meetings ago, I had been asked to give an update on where we are in terms of implementing the 2020 state plan. So I've got a presentation here that I've put together. It's not real fancy, but hopefully it'll do the trick.
Let me share this real quick so
Okay.
that people online can see it.
I guess I am touching something.
Let's go here. Maybe it's full time. Would that be you?
I'm sorry.
What time then?
It's a lot of pressure, isn't it?
I know. One more time. It's been in there.
There.
Let's look at this weird thing. Okay, so
You want
Yeah, you should be able to. Can you see it? It's up here too.
Yeah, okay. All right, so, just to remind everybody, so that the 2020 state plan was adopted by Director Stevenson in November of 2019. The solid waste districts were not required to meet those goals until we adopted the rule that puts them in, it codifies them so that they become the required goals that districts meet. So that rule became effective in December 2020. And at that point, any solid waste district that started writing their plan after that point was required to meet the new state plan goals. And then we have to do a formal review every 3 years. We're not quite there yet, so we're kind of doing kind of an interim just update to see where we are. Keep in mind that because of the way that it works, where not many solid waste districts have actually been required to prepare plans under that state plan, we really don't have much to present in terms of progress because we're just getting to the point of starting to implement what that required. So since we adopted the rule, which then required solid waste districts to use the new state plan, we've had 13 plans come into us since January of 2021 that are drafts. Of those, 2 were under the 2009 state plan and 11 were under the new one. We had received some plans in 2020 from solid waste districts that had voluntarily chosen to use the state plan, but I'm only showing you what happened after they were required to. So the 2 that came under the 2009 state plan had started before they were required to, but we got the drafts in after it was adopted. So of those, of the 11 that were under the 2020 state plan, we had 7 that took advantage of the access to opportunities to recycle, and we had 4 that chose to come under the waste reduction and recycling goals. And then from this point on, there's another 8 solid waste districts that were required to begin preparing plans in 2020. And so they will all be required to use that new plan as well. I had some notes here to kind of break some things down. Let me just see if I can see maybe on the next page. Well, so I was going to try to tell you of the districts that came under the new state plan. Remember, we had reduced the access to recycling opportunities from 90 to 80%. I think of the ones that just chose to demonstrate meeting goal number 1, I want to say that 7 of them, no, I'm sorry, 4 of them used the 80% rather than the 90. The others continued to meet above what they were required to. And then of the ones that came under goal 2, 3 of the 4 chose to continue demonstrating meeting the industrial goal, even though they did not need to. In terms of where we are in meeting our goal 2 waste reduction and recycling rate, we don't have 2021 data yet in, so I can't provide where we are at this point. But just so you can see, in 2019, before the plan was adopted, our residential commercial rate was around 28, 29%, and industrial was 67%. So the state as a whole had met both of the objectives for goal number 2. In 2020, the residential commercial rate went up to 30, but the industrial went down to 52. You know, because COVID hit and some of the districts stopped surveying their industrial sector after the state plan was adopted. We really can't say for certain whether it's a data collection issue, whether stuff actually did change. So we may know more in 2021, but again, it'll be very hard to try to pick out what the reason is for changes in the recycling rate, because it changes a lot just based on survey responses that people get. So let's talk a little bit about state strategy. So these are the things in the state plan that at the state level we're supposed to be doing to further reduction in recycling in Ohio. So the first one was, because we got rid of the industrial objective for the waste reduction recycling rate, the new goal is that solid waste districts provide 3 programs to their industrial sector. So one of the strategies was we needed to reach out to the industries to find out what it was they actually wanted. And so that was one of the strategies that we've implemented. So to begin with, we presented at the Ohio Manufacturer Association's, their environmental subcommittee in February of 2021 to get some advice. Their main advice was to send out a survey. And so I'll get back to that in just a minute. But in preparation, we also spoke with some of the education specialists at the solid waste districts. So we spoke to Cuyahoga, Hamilton, and Summit Reworks to get some idea because they're all very active in terms of reaching out to their industrial sector. And then we also worked with our district office pollution prevention specialists to get some idea from them of the things that they hear about when they're out visiting companies. We did a survey via Microsoft Forms. The Center for Ecotechnology reviewed the survey for us and gave us a lot of input in terms of how to make it better. And so we used a lot of that feedback when we created the survey. The Ohio Manufacturers Association sent out a notice to their members that the survey was available and asking them to fill it out. Our environmental and financial assistance, is that right?
Sure.
Okay. They do email blasts out to industries, and they sent 4 blasts for us to let industries know that the survey is up and to please fill it out. And then they also included a notice in their newsletter. We got 10 responses. So I think this is kind of indicative of what the solid waste districts have to deal with when they're trying to get survey information, is you can do everything you can do. The bottom line is they're not in the business of filling out surveys, they're busy. And so, you can do everything you can do. Even though our survey took an average of 3 minutes to fill out, it still was difficult to get responses. So of the ones that responded, 3 knew which solid waste district they were in. 3 were commercial and 7 were industrial. We were targeting the industrial, but we kind of knew that this was going to happen. And then of them, 5 wanted somebody to follow up with them. So I sent them emails, and then I had the solid waste districts get in touch with them also. So in terms of what they wanted, so we asked them, if these things were available, outreach and education, which would you take advantage of? And by far, most of them said webinars, which I don't think is surprising because you can do those online. But we got a lot of others interested in digital subscriptions and then also publications as well. In terms of which technical assistance options would help them, by far, a lot of them answered finding a recycler or broker for a very specific material, which I think is something we may be able to help them with Ohio Materials Marketplace. I'm not really sure that that's what that does, but and then educating their employees on how to recycle was the second largest one. We asked also in terms of financial assistance, what would help you in terms of your internal programs, and the highest answer was obtaining equipment. So, probably the best way for us to do is to market our grant program to them. A lot of them also identifying and applying for recycling, I think it was equipment. I can't remember. I cut off, my picture cut off, and I didn't look at it to make sure I knew what that was, but I apologize for that. So that's the survey. I wish I could say it was a huge success, but I'm not sure that it really was. The next one that we had was a strategy for assisting local communities in terms of getting information out about what can and can't be recycled. And the main focus was on using social media. So we have a couple things going on for this. So Kevin Zacharias, Jeff Montalban, Marie, I think we're the original ones involved in these No Waste Wednesday posts that we have on Instagram and Twitter. So the first post was in December of 2020. There have been at least 71 to date at this point. At the start of the campaign, our Instagram had about 835 followers, and now there's upwards of 1,270. I know that to people outside who may have a bajillion Instagram followers, this does not seem that impressive, but when you're a state agency, this is a big increase for us. So, and the team meets weekly to develop new posts. They're very creative. They do their own artwork. They do their own wording. So we're very proud. It's been successful. And we also have a new initiative going on, and we did not introduce her Maura Cepasi, right? Okay, good, because I've been pronouncing it wrong all this time. Maura is an intern. She comes to us, she's in school at Case Western, but she has an internship through OSU, is that right? And she's working with both DEFA and us on a couple of projects. So you may be hearing from Maura here in the future. So we're thankful to have her here to help us out. And then we're also working, Jessica is helping us with an effort to try to identify in the state what solid waste districts are doing recycle right campaigns. And we're trying to create, the idea is to maybe create a central point on our website where we can put information that we can tell people, if you need help, there's stuff available to you, here's where you go to find it. So you'll be hearing more about that too.
Really, the goal of the initiative is to put together, to understand first and foremost what the solid waste districts are doing and not doing out there. Our districts are very much like the state of Ohio. They're very diverse. So they're diverse in the sense of the staff, number of staff they have, the amount of money, the expertise, and all of that. So if you go to Cuyahoga or Franklin or Hamilton or Montgomery, then you start seeing Cadillac programs. If you go to other more rural solid waste districts, you have less staff, less attention to it, less money and all that. So we're trying to at least get a baseline understanding of what everyone is doing out there. And we're also going to be meeting with Recycling Partnership and Rumpke and Waste and Republic, trying to figure out PR-wise what they're pulling together as far as recycle right strategies. After all of that, the end goal is to somehow provide, to make available a toolkit for solid waste districts. So back in the old days of DNR, because I still pull up on my 28 years of DNR, every year we had a campaign and we would shoot something out, very much like don't bag your recyclables, or, you know, they'll put your burger plastic bags in the recycling stream, something like that, something very simple. But it would give them the toolkit necessary to do like PSAs, do billboards, do radio ads, do TV ads, do newspaper ads, all that. And so then they can put their name on it. So for those districts that don't have the bandwidth to be able to do something like this, we want to be able to give them something that'll make it very simple for them to push out to their residents. A campaign that is common throughout. And the common part is the very difficult part, because waste haulers don't always, and recyclers don't always collect the same stuff. And as a result of that, we have to be very general, something that we can see from Ashtabula to Hamilton County, from Williams County to Gallipolis and Gallia County. So, so that's the challenge of it, but we want to be able to give the solid waste districts something that they can work with in their own community to kind of push this effort out.
And there's a lot of tools already available. So we're not trying to create something from scratch. We're trying to give them what we know is already available.
Which is why we want to kind of understand, you know, what everyone's doing. I had a conversation with Amanda at Rumpke, and she said, yes, we have something kind of in the middle of it. So we need a better understanding of what the Recycling Partnership has, Rumpke's doing, what Waste is doing, what Public's doing, so that it may fit and it may not, but we have to educate ourselves about that too.
Just a few examples of some posts. Here's one about plastic bags, which is kind of a universal thing. Not putting them in your bin. Here's one about packing your bags packing your lunch using brown paper bags. And then, I'm not sure, what's this one, Jeff?
That would have to look close. That one has to do with, have to read closely.
It's okay.
It's too small.
Just so you get some idea. There's been a whole bunch of them. So our people are very creative, and it's been a success. So another one, which I'm not going to go over any more than just to show you this, is the reducing contamination at drop-offs. We're hoping to pull the plug and start that one here very shortly, since we got approval from the director to use that money for that. And then another suggestion was to include contamination reduction efforts in our recycling and litter prevention grant programs. And so that was included in the 2022 grant round. And we did receive 2 grant requests for that. And were both of them awarded? Are we allowed to say?
Yeah.
Okay. And then finally, I've already spoken about this one. So again, I'm not going to go into a lot of depth about this. This is the fiber collection program that we're working with on the paper mills for collecting additional cardboard in the state. We're thinking that it may result in some sort of a pilot project, but we're not trying to guess at this point what the outcome will be, because, you know, there may be all kinds of things that people come up with that we haven't really thought about. So we're just trying to keep an open mind in terms of this one. So we'll be giving you more information once we know it on that one. And that's what I have. So if anybody, council, has any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Again, we haven't really had much time to see the effects of the new state plan and what's going on around the state. We'll know more maybe when it comes time for our first full-scale evaluation of it, which would probably be next year.
And Ernie, what's the industrial goal again? It dropped below, let's see,
It used to be 66%.
66.
It's a weird number, but it had to do to get the industrial and the residential to average out to 50, because we used to have a statewide goal total of 50.
Steve, I don't know if you were involved in a lot of those conversations, but basically the number was, it wasn't worth it. I mean, it didn't mean anything. I mean, I appreciate all the efforts that everybody went through, but to have 10 responses across the state is, I mean, it doesn't mean anything.
Welcome to Beth's world and Marcy's world, right?
Which is why we did what we did,
Right.
why we made the suggestion that we made, because you weren't getting anything. You're spending all this effort not doing anything. Chet, you guys talked about doing this outreach stuff, and we talked about this, so this is our primary objective. Is it worth using this forum to try to get a SWATO, the retail merchants, try to get some industries, try to get a meeting set up here at the end of this year and take one of our meetings and drill down on some of this stuff, try to be specific.
Drill down on what kind of programs and services you think that they may want.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't hurt. I mean, I think the challenge, Mr. Chairman, is that their membership is diverse, and their needs and wants are diverse, and they know that. And so I think the challenge for them would be speaking on their behalf. Is that what they're saying to you accurate and what their membership is saying? And it is an extreme challenge to try to get a response. You know, I have folks go out each month to go see a solid waste district, health department, and and I think that we actually learned more from that, having lunch with the company and then doing a tour and then having a conversation with them, try to find out what they need. Yesterday, we were in Pratt Industries. And I think we learned more at lunch than we had known before that visit. So.
Oh, I think we learned more in there that you don't want to work in there because it's over 100 degrees in there.
Paper bills are fine to summer. So. So it is a challenge. I don't want to discount that. I mean, I would maybe leave that up to Alex and others, you know, in his position to say, is that worthwhile to do?
One of the things that we've tried, or that I've tried to get us to do as a group, is to help you guys in when you find something that you want to do, to drill down on it and try to get some more traction with it. So I'm not necessarily talking about, I'm going to call it the birdshot theory of let's learn about everybody, and because that's the problem. You have to do that, but that's the problem is you get all this stuff and then we've got to figure out how to focus. You got to pick a horse for all intents and purposes and focus on it. Otherwise, the traction goes too far, too little. So I guess the question becomes, if we have a group that we think can be a guinea pig of this is how we do it, this is how we get everybody together, that you guys have found, maybe that's an option.
Well, I have an idea. I mean, now that you're talking about that, and Dave is going to have to help me with this past year's experience with our clients and conference. So that conference, and I don't know, it's virtual.
It's going to be virtual in October.
So I know when it was in person, it drew, I want to say 500 people to it. Morpsey has something very similar. They drew 800 people. I mean, if we were able to work with, those two entities and somehow try to figure out how can we get your attendees to respond to a survey, a short survey. And it's diverse enough, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's diverse enough as far as who they are, what they do, what they produce, that I think we would feel more comfortable in the results of that, saying that at least, these sectors are being well represented as far as what their needs are. I don't know, Dave, I mean, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good point. And actually, like, not pulling Jeff in, but he's on our committee too. And that could be something we build in from the solid waste side, where there's a couple sessions, right, Jeff? I think that we're working on.
Right, yeah.
And that's something. So for sure, I think we have a great attendance. It's going to be a virtual, so we're going to format. It might be like a 2-week format. So I think that that's a good opportunity to reach the business and commercial sector. The Morpsey Summit, that's October 14th on sustainability. Their attendance, I think that's a mixture. I think you have a lot of local government nonprofits too, but like you do get it. That's something we'll probably be able to get on their agenda. That's another opportunity to talk.
Mr. Chairman, a couple things. Even for us, it's difficult to get responses to surveys. When it's coming directly from the entity that has the formal relationship. So, but I would offer this. I don't know if there's a way to incentivize more participation, and I mean that in the sense of low-hanging fruit. So this is just a hypothetical, but a lot of our members are doing great things in the sustainability space. So I think about Kroger and Zero Hunger, Zero Waste, their initiative. I don't know if maybe a more formal discussion, Chet, that involves the director maybe and someone higher up, someone in the company. You listen to what they're doing, you offer, hey, what can we do to support your sustainability initiatives? And then there's some sort of, recognition as this is a Ohio EPA green certified business or company. However you can frame it. I just wonder if there's a way to bring some positive recognition to these companies that would incentivize greater participation. And I would obviously be happy, Chet, to work on, maybe some of those more face-to-face discussions.
And I think that I know Dave's going to have something to say because we have a program that recognizes businesses being a good environmental steward member of the community. And I think Director Stevenson is all about that. I mean, that's where she kind of cut her teeth as, chief, the deputy director and so forth. So that's why the sustainability and compliance conferences are kind of her babies. She makes sure that, the resources and support is there for this because she recognizes that outreach is important. I mean, I think there's something there. I agree with you, Alex. It's tough. And we've got to think outside the box about how we get that. I mean, having the director's participation is very important. If we're going to do a smaller group one-on-one, what are you doing? How can we help you? Are there things that we could do better? Kind of thing, conversation. I think we do kind of, a couple of things. I like that idea. I like the idea that we try to take advantage of the compliance and sustainability concepts to see if we can do more of a general survey type thing for that, and maybe put the two together as kind of resources and information.
Because, Mr. Chairman, what happens now is Chet and his team will come to us and another association. Obviously, most of the data you're looking for, information you're looking for is from our larger members. We send it to our contacts who obviously are in that space. It goes through the corporate bureaucracy and maybe gets to the right person. And by that time, either it's out of date, or they're saying, well, why is EPA really asking about? There's a suspicion involved, I think, and obviously protecting that data, as you and I have talked about, is very important to these companies as well. So that's why I'm thinking a more focused conversation that is maybe in person, at least initially, would prompt a better response from these companies. I think that's true not just of retail community, but the other industry sectors that you're looking for greater participation. Because I would imagine the response from other groups isn't extraordinary either.
There's no magic bullet out there that the chambers come up with or OMAs come up with, and they're not telling the retail merchants, So it's just it's a challenge that we face, and we face it. I was talking to Jeff about this. We have this called Big Box Store survey of trying to get this data for the solid waste district. That challenge is always there, trying to even maintain relationships with sustainability. I mean, things change so dramatically. So we were talking about, okay, how do we engage with them on a more regular basis? So it's not every year. But I like the idea of a more personable conversation, and I think the director would go for that. I think bring in Mark Johnson, the deputy director for business development, and talk about what that would look like and who we go after first, because we'd want to probably go after, the grocery stores, for instance, or the plastics manufacturer or something. We want to target them with that.
But I think what you do have, obviously, to your advantage is companies increasingly want to promote what they're doing in the space, and more recognition and media attention around what they're doing from a sustainability standpoint. I mean, they're going to welcome that. Now, they want to do it on their terms, certainly, but I think you do have that to your advantage. So if we can figure that out, which I know is easier said than done.
I don't want to be a taskmaster, but we're 20 minutes behind now, so I just.
I know, I talk too much, but here's one thing before I forget, because I'm old and I forget a lot. So retail merchants is set up in sectors in a way, right? I mean, you have groups that are by sector.
Yeah.
And I'm almost thinking, why don't we take that model and say, let's go by the sectors. And we know generally who those active players are. Why can't we at least get them engaged in a conversation with the director? Because I think that most likely, if you told them, hey, this is a really good thing, you should take advantage of this, they're more likely to really, participate. So I guess offline, we'd like to have more conversation.
Conversation deserves a little bit more attention. Before we move on, I want to say one thing. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. You've been trying to get surveys done for how many years now? 30? And it's never worked. What makes us think it's going to change today? Okay? No matter how you try to get it done, it's not going to work. Stop. Surveys are not going to work in this space. Alex said it. The only way that, even with the sustainability departments, it goes through their release, not your form. They're going to release the information exactly how they want. Your form be damned, okay? And it's just not going to happen. So we have to change what we're doing and how we're approaching that to be able to get anything done. And I think that's where the discussion needs to go of, let's come up with a whole new way. Let's come up with a way of getting people into us that they want to talk to the agency. Not you trying to talk to them, they want to talk to you. And I think that's the challenge. So let's, maybe on the next meeting, we'll put that in as an agenda item, so we can try to get that strategy that we helped to craft down the road a little bit further.
I'm sorry to cut the conversation off. I wasn't trying to.
I was getting ready to do it too, Ernie.
Yeah.
So we're going to move things around a little bit. We have a couple of speakers outside the agency that we want to make sure they've taken their time to develop presentations and attend today. So we want to make sure we can get them on. So we're going to move the recycling litter prevention grant update back a little bit. I think we'll have time at the end to make up, so I don't think that we'll be missing something. But I just wanted to go on and move on to Lou Vega, who's with the Mahoning County Solid Waste District. They got a grant just recently through us for a project that I think you'll find very interesting. And so, and Lou, I apologize. I misspelled your name on our agenda, so I apologize for that. But we have Lou with us today with a presentation he's going to tell us about. I'm even curious to hear more about this too. So Lou, are you ready to go? You're on. You're
Can you hear me?
Oh, yep.
Okay, great. Let me try to share this Oop, I think that didn't work. Hold on. Let's get rid of that share there. And we want to share this. Okay, is it working?
Yes.
All right, yeah, you have my screen?
Hold on just a minute,
You
Lou.
might have to switch screens there.
Yep. There it is.
All right, we're
We've
good.
got it.
All right, well, thank you everybody for having me today. My name is Lou Vega. I'm the director for the Mahoning County Solid Waste Management District, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a project that really helped us obtain a permanent collection facility here for Mahoning County. And we could not have obtained this building without this project, nor could we have undertaken this project without this building. So the two are synergistic. They run hand in hand. This is going to be a joint collaborative between Ohio EPA for providing the grant for us, Second Harvest Food Bank, Flying High, and we'll get a little bit more about what those organizations do. But to start this off, we're going to go here. And the problem worth solving is any solid waste district that has conducted a single day special waste collection event, whether it be for appliances, tires, hazardous waste, knows the amount of traffic and the general labor and logistics required to conduct these one-day events. And so I just wanted to give you guys a taste of how it looks in Mahoning County. And granted, this is one of our smaller ones. This is just a tire drive. Our electronics drives have either 2 or 3 times more participants, but this is a quick look at what it looks like here. As soon as this plays here. Well, that didn't work. Let's try this again. So to give you guys an idea, that is about a half a mile, two car lengths wide, with about 21 processors as far as labor is concerned required to do this. And we're still backed up about, again, a half a mile or about an hour and 20 minutes wait time from the last car to the first car. The electronics drives are even worse in that at least tires you can throw out of a car and they roll, whereas electronics are extremely heavy, especially the old CRT monitors. And our last tire drive or our last electronics drive, we literally had 46 laborers for a 5-hour event so that we can move 80,000 pounds. It's a daunting undertaking and something had to be done. Something that we can take smaller, more digestible chunks out of this. And we looked around to see what other solid waste districts were doing, and a permanent collection facility seemed to be something that we might want to look into. That being said, there just happened to be a potential location here in Mahoning County. It is the old Masco warehouse. It is a 30,000 square foot facility that used to belong to our County Board of Developmental Disabilities. After some state funding had went away, that building had been vacant since 2018. The building also houses a 3,000 square foot greenhouse, a 500 square foot shed, a 1,000 square foot pavilion, sits on about 5.6 acres of property, holds a $2 million tax valuation. And so what we did was we went to the Mahoning County Commissioners and we competed for this building along with our local sheriff's department that was looking at having a facility to put an umbrella facility to put the FBI and the U.S. Marshals and a bunch of other law enforcement offices under one roof. There was also some interest in private sale of the building as well. So we went to the county commissioners. We told them the reason why we want this for a permanent collection facility. We tried to sell them our vision, but ultimately we did not get the building. And so we were going back to the Canfield Fairgrounds for those half-mile long lines, and you're at the mercy of whatever weather comes your way, whether it be oppressive heat or rain or what have you. That being said, timing is everything on this one. So we got a call from the director of Second Harvest Food Bank. They are a large food bank here in the Northeast Ohio area. They service Columbiana, Mahoning, and Trumbull counties. They have many charities that they donate their food to. They get a good source of their food, our local grocery stores. When produce is nearing expiration and they can't sell it anymore, it goes to the food bank, and then it goes to the charities. However, despite distributing over 11 million meals annually, they're still generating about 2,200 pounds of food waste weekly, which equates to about 8 commercial dumpsters. And if you're looking at about 30 yards per lift every time they dump that, an annual disposal cost of about $12,480. That translates, according to their information, that for every dollar they receive in donations, they can feed 6 or send out 6 meals for every dollar. So if you take that $12,480 that they're putting in their operational waste disposal costs, they are not able to serve 74,000 meals. So they wanted some kind of, they requested some consultation from us, some advice on what they can do to reduce their waste. We talked about composting. However, they do have a space limitation, and ultimately they don't know what to do with the finished end product. And so we did a little pounding around, and we found Flying High. Flying High is another nonprofit located here in Mahoning County. And their main goal is to provide adults with traditional barriers to employment, ways of getting experience that they need, real life experience that transfers into the workforce. They do have education programs, they have drug rehabilitation programs, and they do this in part by selling produce in food deserts or direct to farm to table applications, and they use those proceeds to turn around and pay for their operational costs providing these services. So we talked to them a little bit, and they were very interested in working with us in that the majority of their growing space are in public gardens out in Mahoning County. So they are limited by weather and season, how much material they can actually harvest and sell and keep funding their organization in addition to donations. So they were very interested in working with us in this project and maybe working and operating the greenhouse located at the Masco workshop. So we went around all of Ohio. We talked with Ohio EPA. And I wanted to give a special shout out to Geauga Trumbull Solid Waste District, Jennifer Jones out there. Lorain County, I was working with Jim Sikora at that time. Summit County gave us some real, they got us inside the Akron Zoo so we could look at their composting program. Obviously the Akron Zoo, Mansfield Correctional, and a couple other correctional facilities here in Mahoning County that are doing large scale composting for their facilities. But this is basically a shout out page on what we did in order to try to look around and see what other people were doing in the county. If you're looking in the, or in the state, if you're looking at the two pictures there, the top picture there is is just an inside shot of Lorain County collection facility. And the bottom picture is the Big Hannah industrial composter that's located at the Akron Zoo. So we took all the information that we had gathered throughout the state. We looked at our existing infrastructure, and we felt that we can do this. We can work with Second Harvest. We can collect all their food waste. What you're looking at in this picture is just a standard Ford F-250 pickup truck. It has what's called a satellite dumper. It's a 6 cubic yard satellite dumper on the back of it. Everything is automated. This truck is actually utilized for our office paper program that we have. People fill up 96-gallon carts. We roll them up to the truck. It automatically tilts them in the truck. Once that hopper is filled, we can back up to another 8-yard and dump it right inside. We're actually looking on doing the same type of process with Second Harvest. We'll be distributing 96-gallon carts on a daily basis. We'll be going there and picking up their food waste, emptying it into this truck, bringing it back to our facility at Michelle Masco, and then ultimately composting it. But I'm getting ahead of myself on that one. So with all this information and with a renewed purpose, we go back to the county commissioners. We also partnered up with those law enforcement agencies that wanted that building. Keep in mind, we were both competing for the same building, the sheriff's department and my department. So we got together and we decided, let's go joint in on this building. So we actually are going to split the building up 60-30, where 30% of the office space is going to go towards those law enforcement agencies. Again, that's the U.S. Marshals, BCI, FBI, our Valley Task Force, its Violent Crimes and Drug Task Force. They're all going to go in the office space in that building. The other 60% of the building, the warehouse space, the greenhouse space, the pavilion space, and the shed space all belong now to the Solid Waste District. Those law enforcement agencies are actually going to pay us rent for occupying that building. We talked about we're going to share capital improvement expenses, share utilities and facility expenses. We did this. We already started this process in that the Solid Waste District had put up half of the cost of renovating the roof on this building. Actually, it's going to be a complete tear off. And the Mahoning County Commissioners came up with the other half of the building, or for the roof of the building as well. So they are in with us 100% on this building. They love the idea of diverting the food waste from Second Harvest as well as save them operating costs. They love the idea of having a permanent facility all year round that Flying High can operate out of and help their operations as well. They love the fact that the Sheriff's Department are going to get what they need as far as their office space is concerned. And basically, we're going to utilize 100% of this more than 34,000 square foot facility. So that being said, since we got the building and we got the roof is being done, then we were able to move forward with our application to Ohio EPA to fund us for an industrial composter. I'm happy to say that in the last 2 weeks, we were awarded that grant. And so I want to thank the Ohio EPA for that as we move forward on this one. And so ultimately, we've had success that none of this could have happened, again, without the building. We couldn't have had this programs, and we couldn't have had these programs without the building. And ultimately, Ohio EPA is playing a part in that by funding this composter. And again, we want to thank them very much for their assistance in this program. So I just wanted to cut it short. Everything is still in the works with this building, but I do want to make just a side note on the value of this building and just how lucky we are in the Solid Waste District. I went last Friday to tour the new permanent collection facility in Geauga County. I believe it's a $1.4 million facility, but it is about 5,000 to 6,000 square foot. And in comparison, this 34,000 plus square foot building, so far, our investment is about 400,000. So I just kind of want to put out the benefit and the real savings that this district is realizing because the county commissioners thought to award us the building. So that's all I have.
Council, does anybody have questions for Lou?
Thank you very much, sir. That was a very neat collaboration that it's right time, right place. I think you described it very well.
And we hear a lot about organics diversion. And so, they're making some effort there in Mahoning for organics diversion. Lou, I hope that you would be willing to come back again in the future after things have gotten kicked off and just kind of give us an update in terms of where things are.
Indeed, we spoke to the manufacturer of the Big Hannah, and they anticipate that the composter will be here around December. So we're going to start the collection process then. And once a 6-month time frame has come on, which is about the time it takes for that food waste to cycle through that system, it's not going to shut off. It literally is going to be nonstop every day we're anticipating between 23,000 to 30,000 pounds of finished compost at the end of the process. And this is going to be on an annual basis. So what we can't use in the greenhouse is going to go to our Mill Creek Metro Parks, our local parks, and public facilities that they can use for planting around those areas. It's another development had just come on. That same Flying High organization is partnering up with our Port Authority here in Mahoning County. They are actually building a second greenhouse for them at the Mahoning County Campus of Care. And so we're actually going to be utilizing our compost there as well. So this thing is just blowing up. It truly is blowing up, and we're just in on the infancy. And I'm really overwhelmed right now with all the stuff that has to be done. And we got to meet with the architect. Just got forklift training yesterday, but regardless, thank you, the EPA. And I will, I'd love to have you guys down and tour the facility once we're up and running.
Thank you, Lou. Appreciate you taking the time today to present to us. We have next on the agenda, we're going to have a little session here about plastics recovery. We have Greg Johnson, who's the general manager with Evergreen. He's going to kind of give us a little bit overview of his company. They're doing some expansion plans in their plant in Clyde, Ohio, and then a little bit of talk about what we can do to maybe help improve plastics recovery in Ohio. So Greg, are you there?
I am. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Just a moment here and all. All right. So I'll start with a quick overview of Evergreen and what we do, and then we'll talk a little bit about the current market for our raw material, the recycled bottles, and then the market and demand for our finished material, which is food grade recycled PET resin, and then what we need for improvements to help allow us to continue to expand. So first, a little bit on Evergreen. So Evergreen was founded in 1998. We were originally a vertical integration with another Ohio company known as Polychem. That company is still our sister company, although we have separated from them. We still have share ownership. We were founded to supply them with raw material for their polyester strapping materials. And now our focus had shifted more into the PET resin. And I guess I should clarify, I'm sure most on this call know, but for those who don't, PET is polyethylene terephthalate, which is the polymer that is widely used in plastic soda bottles, water bottles, food packaging trays, those type things. So that's what we recycle. So we've been through a lot of expansion over the years. We started our facility with about 75,000 square feet and about 35 employees. And with our most recent expansion, you'll see here in a second, we're pushing upwards of 200 employees and closer to 300,000 square feet. So recently, we've invested nearly $200 million into our business, and that's some in Ohio, some outside of Ohio, which has taken us to be one of the largest producers of food grade rPET resin in North America. And if we have our way, we will be the largest, undisputed largest by the end of this year. So our current layout, as I said, we were founded in Clyde, Ohio. Since then, we have expanded into Riverside, California, Albany, New York, and we have a small facility in Amherst, Nova Scotia as well. So this is a photo of our Clyde, Ohio facility. And if you look at the top right where the picture of the building where the roof is raised, that's our most recent expansion. It's about 55,000 square feet that we just added onto that facility. In fact, we're still in the middle of installing lines and commissioning new lines. We have one of the new lines up and running at this time. So when that expansion is complete, Evergreen as a whole will have approximately 217 million pounds of annual capacity of finished rPET resin. So when you think about that and the yield losses that come with processing a bale of recycled PET that's coming out of one of the local MRFs, this is primarily clear resin, so that takes away a little from it as well. But and then you're holding water bottles and soda bottles now, which have widely been lightweighted. It's a lot of bottles that are being processed through our facilities, approximately 12 billion bottles a year. This is our Riverside, California facility. This was a recent acquisition about a year ago. In this facility, we process about 100 million pounds of bales, so input raw material, and we achieve about 80 million pounds of output material from that facility. We're also doing some expansions there, mostly on input capacity and maximizing the amount of bales we can process, as well as improving the quality of the material. This is a photo of our Albany, New York facility. Our Albany facility is our smallest facility as far as volume goes. Processes about 50 million pounds of bales annually, and we get a little over 20 million pounds of rPET resin out of that facility. The real driver for us on this acquisition was the high quality raw material feedstock. So we actually, since we have limited ability to these types of feedstocks in the Midwest, a lot of that material ends up in our Ohio facility to be processed. Similar with our Nova Scotia facility, we collect the vast majority of all the bottles in Atlantic Canada. Really, Newfoundland is the only Atlantic province we don't currently collect from, and hopefully here soon we're collecting their bottles as well. But that's a small processing facility. We don't make any finished food grade resin in that facility. But it's more of a collection, and we break the bottles down into flake form for more efficient transportation. So spoke a little bit about the expansion in our Ohio facility. A lot of that has to do with meeting the demands of our customers. So our customers are all the large brands, CPG brands. So I'm sure you guys can guess who those are. We try to support the bottle-to-bottle market. We do not sell much, if any, material back into the fiber market because we're a firm believer in the circular economy, and we want when the material goes back into a bottle, it can be recycled almost endlessly, to where once it goes into fiber or other polyester products that are non-bottle, recycling becomes extremely difficult. So in order to support that and the needs of our customers, we've had to do a lot of upgrades in our facilities. And really the reason for that is we've been selling rPET resin, food grade rPET resin, since 2003. So it's not that it's new to us, but the demand for rPET resin has increased dramatically. And part of that is more companies converting to using recycled resin in their products. But part of it is they are also increasing the recycled content in their bottles. So maybe even just 5 years ago, they might have only been putting 10% recycled resin in their bottles, with 90% of that being virgin resin. Well, really the virgin resin could make up for any of the inconsistencies that the recycled resin might have caused. Now that more of these brands are going to 100% or closer to 100% recycled content, the recycled resin needs to perform more like virgin resin. So we've done a lot of upgrades, and this is much of the investment we've been making here recently. The picture here in this on on this slide is our solid state polycondensation reactors. This is this basically on PET. PET is one of those great polymers that can be isn't degraded every time you process it, which is why a lot of brands are converting from other polymers such as polyethylene or polypropylene to PET packaging, because one, PET is more widely recycled, and two, it doesn't degrade. Or if it is degraded, we can bring it back. So for instance, if the IV or the intrinsic viscosity is to be reduced when you extrude it, we can run it through a reactor and we can then improve those qualities again, so it can be used back into that same package. We had to do a lot of other upgrades as well. Over time, the quality of the raw material coming into our facility has severely degraded. That coupled with labor challenges in our facilities, we partnered with a company called Amp Robotics, and we use artificial intelligence powered sorting robots now to separate the bottles in the stream. So many people think of recycling as a kind of an archaic process, something they could do in their garage. It's just separating bottles. We have these large facilities. We're using near infrared optical sorters. We're using artificial intelligence within our process. And, currently we have 15 of these robots across our facility. We took a very labor intensive process, a job that no one wanted to do. It was the highest turnover in our facilities, and we were able to automate that. And, fortunately, we've never had a layoff or anything due to these type of implementations. All of our employees were very pleased that they could focus on other positions in the plant. So it's been a great addition for us from that standpoint, as well as dramatically improve the consistency of the sorted final product. I'm going to skip through a couple of these slides fairly quickly, but this is just highlighting why consumers are preferring rPET resin, and we'll get into a little more of the details here. So some of the sustainability advantages of recycled PET versus virgin PET, as we just said, consumer preference, reduced energy consumption in both electricity and water, dramatically smaller carbon footprint, keeps all this material out of the landfills. In our Ohio facility, for instance, in just bales coming from the MRFs, we process over 70 million pounds annually. This is again, a little more on the impact and the benefits of that, but a couple of things to point out. PET recycling, and this is probably the biggest challenge for us, is the recycle rate in the United States is 29%. And that's really being propped up by the 10 or so deposit states in the U.S. But when you look at it from the impact of reduction in greenhouse gases, there's a dramatic reduction using the recycled PET. I heard in some of the other presentations, about industrial recycling and, some of the impacts of that. And, that's also something we do. So we're a PET recycler. That's our focus. But over the years, we get a little bit of everything in bales. And I mean, everything. And I'm, you can speak to the MRFs and they get a little more than us, but when we get everything from car parts to, sometimes it's just a lot of paper and cardboard and those type things. And we certainly don't want to put anything in the landfill. We try to reduce that as much as possible. And even our outthrow bales that would typically go to the landfill, we've spent the last several years trying to make sure we find outlets for those to where they can be reprocessed, or is there some sort of use for them? But one of the things we do with our customers is we partner with them, and we do audits of their facilities. So we go in and we've done this with several companies here in Ohio. We go in, our sustainability team does an audit. We identify all of their industrial wastes, even things that are non-PET, and we try to find a home for those. Since we've been doing this for so long, we found partners that can process just about anything. And we try to extend those services onto our customers. And this really ranges on things that most people don't even think about. The easy things are, cardboard and a lot of companies already do a good job of separating those. But many of our customers, if they're using our resin, they're making bottles out of it. And at these bottling plants, they're grinding some of their scrap, and so they can reuse it internally, and it's their own internal recycling program. But on those grinders, for instance, they'll have dust collection systems. And we've actually been able to find outlets for the dust out of the dust collectors, so that's not going to the landfill. So lots of little things like that that we're able to help contribute with. We've also, at all of our facilities, been trying to expand our community outreach. We've done several events in Ohio and our other locations. These are photos from a beach cleanup we did at Wendy Park in just outside of Cleveland. Here, I don't know, probably about a month ago. So we had a group of volunteers. So from our internal, we had about 75 employees of Evergreen or Greenbridge, our sister company, that arrived there, and we probably had another 20 or 25 people that were just happened to be at the beach that day, that assisted us in cleaning up that area, the shores of Lake Erie there. So all of the material was collected, separated, brought back to our facilities, and we ensured it got processed properly. Heard most of that. So that again, just highlighting the recycling rates and what's in the landfill, and that we're certainly an outlet for those type things, and we want to make sure we do what we can to help. So year to date in Ohio, and this 12.3 million pounds of PET, that's a finished resin. We processed a lot more bales than that. The number is actually a little low this year because of our expansion and moving some equipment around. But we've diverted about 3.8 million pounds of byproducts from the landfill. So that's other things that come in our PET bales, which includes things right down to the cap and label on the bottle. The cap and label are not PET, but even though we don't want those, and we want to make sure we find an outlet for them. And then same information just for our company as a whole in the United States. Some of the products that we actively pursue and use internally. So I threw a couple of graphs in here as well, just to kind of show where the market is right now. I'll say it's a very challenging market right now, and it's because of the lack of supply of baled bottles from the MRFs, as sort of another way of saying that we're not collecting enough in the United States. It's driving the cost of these raw materials up dramatically, which some people may look at and say, well, that's a good thing, right? Well, it can be. It can benefit some, and certainly the MRF operators are. I'm sure appreciate this over when a year and a half ago when bales were down into the 9 cent a pound range, but the challenge with it is it starts outpacing virgin resin, and people that are not committed to using recycled content, they start going back to virgin resin and reducing the needs for recycled content. So fortunately, many of the big brands are committed, but it starts to pose these challenges. The other challenge is it's limiting expansion and growth. Are the lack of collection in the United States, and most of what I'm showing here, that last graph was showing Midwest and California bale indexes and pricing, and this is showing the U.S. as a whole. And this study was done by an association called NAPCOR, and really what they were looking at is what is it going to take to meet the sustainability initiatives that have been thrown out there by many of the brands. And as I stated, we're below 30% as a country now. You can see in 2022 they're showing the recycling rate of 39%, which is certainly not going to happen. And then it would by 2025 have to go up to 45%, and then over 70%. Or over 77% in 2030. 2025 and 2030 are the largest initiatives out there. Are the targets that the brands have provided. So they also put some estimates on what it would take, what investment it would take to meet these demands, and assuming about an $80 million facility. By 2030, they're saying over $3 billion would have to be invested in this space to be able to meet those demands. And the reason for showing this is, want everyone to see that the demand is there. If we can figure out how to collect more bottles, I can tell you we would certainly take them. We've had to extend our outreach of where we pull bottles from to be able to keep our plants running. It's certainly limited our expansions across the U.S. and in Ohio. Our board of directors is certainly capable and willing. We could double the size of our facility in Ohio, but we don't know how to get enough raw material to make that happen. That project is on hold indefinitely until we can come up with a plan on how to do those things. The demand is there, is a great thing. The supply is the current challenge. And then, how do we address that? I'm not sure. There's few things out there that are proven. Deposit programs are probably the most proven thing to do that, but it's not, widely implemented across the country. This is from another study that was done showing the access the U.S. has to recycling in 1990 versus 2017. And you can see access has gone up, but the recycling rate has stayed about the same or maybe even gone down a little bit as a percentage, that is. I'll say what we've done as Evergreen, and certainly happy to support others, that are on this call today in any way we can, is, if we can't incentivize, people to recycle, then the next best step is they have to have access to it, which it looks like most do, but then we have to educate everyone. So at Evergreen, we try to do that. We host as many tours as possible to show people that recycling does work, and actually can grow and be more successful if we can get good quality raw materials put in the right place. So we do community outreaches now. I showed some of the cleanups and things we've done, but we've also done, in some of our local communities, we don't have easy access to recycling. So at the schools, we've provided recycling bins. We go and collect them, or someone at the school volunteers to just bring them over to our facility. things like that. We have, unfortunately, because of, we're still a small company, our ability to reach out and have an impact is very limited. So certainly enjoy doing these types of presentations and getting our message out and in front of as many people as possible, and see how we can partner to continue to promote recycling and improve collection. Any questions?
Council.
Greg, I have a question. Steve Sargent, I have a question. At your plant in Clyde now, you mentioned the deposit. What percentage, just ballpark, are you getting in deposit versus non-deposit volume?
As far as bales, we don't process really any deposit bales in our Ohio facility. It's all curbside material. The only deposit material we get is because we have more food grade pelletizing capacity than we do raw material input capacity. We get deposit material from the Northeast states out of our Albany facility. Their excess capacity comes to Ohio. Ideally, we would expand our Ohio plant, the front end, the sort and wash portion of it, to process more bales, to be able to process all of that material internally in the Ohio facility and produce the final food grade resin there. But as I said, the challenge on making that investment has been, can we get enough bales to support that?
Thank you.
Council, any other questions? Greg, I do have a question in the chat for you. So we had a question about where the PET waste goes. So for example, your wastewater treatment facility waste or the biosolids, where do you guys get rid of that stuff?
It's all disposed of locally. So yeah, we do have our own wastewater treatment, pre-treatment facility on site. And then, but exact location, I don't know, exactly like what landfill or those type things. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I think that the real question was, does it end up going to a landfill, or is it, have another distribution method?
Yeah. So it depends on the output material, but yes, from wastewater treatment, I believe that does, but I can certainly confirm that.
Okay. Thank you, Greg.
Greg, this is Mike Deneen. Do you have any idea, is your rejected material at the plant an issue, or is it a small percentage in Ohio?
Well, coming out of, so the yield rate on a curbside bale is typically around 60%. Good usable PET. And that's including the removal of cap and label. If you look at our other facilities, California and New York, they're closer to 75-80%.
Let me ask the question differently then. Is there anything that's just flat rejected at the gate that you just say, we're not taking it? Is that a high number, low number? Or
okay.
There?
Yeah, that's that's a very low number. We try to process everything we get. We certainly have conversations with, MRFs or brokers that we work with when things are, we find all kinds of foreign objects in there and those type things. We've had some here recently that were, full of clothing and carpet and those type things that just don't process in our system. And then of course we get the dreaded car parts and, heavy steel parts that just damage our equipment. But for the most part, it's I'd say probably less than 1% of anything's rejected at the dock like that.
Jennifer, would you like to ask?
Thank you very much. Gregory, I represent the municipalities in Ohio, and I have a quick question about the contamination ratio for the New York deposit collected bottles versus the curbside recycling bottles. Is it higher in one versus the other, or is there no difference?
Oh,
The
there's a
amount of
dramatic,
contamination.
yeah, dramatic difference. The Midwest curbside collected, single stream recycling is far more contaminated than a deposit stream. It's really not even comparable. On the is like in the Northeast, for instance, our system is probably half the size to sort up there, because there's just no contamination in there. They're really just separating for color when they separate bottles. To where in Ohio we have probably, I don't know, 50,000 square feet worth of separation equipment trying to pull out all things that are not PET before we even separate for color. So it's a pretty dramatic difference from that sense.
Thank you for sharing.
Are there other questions people have for Greg? Well, Greg, we appreciate your time here. One of the things we're trying to accomplish here is figuring out how to get more stuff from not being disposed to the people who need to use it. So, any insights that we get from people is helpful. And we may reach out to you again in the future when we get around to trying to think a little bit more about it. But we appreciate your presentation today.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. And if there's anyone has any questions on, what really do we prefer as how to recycle and those type things, we're certainly happy to help. We've been processing curbside material in the Midwest for over 20 years now. And, certainly can provide that type of education. And then, of course, anything we can do to help to assist with, collection in the state of Ohio, whether it be, education or other things, we're certainly happy to assist there as well.
Greg, before we end here, we do have another question from Beth. Beth, would you like to ask?
Yes, you mentioned that you've seen a degradation in the feedstock. So my assumption is a degradation in the bales. Can you identify, can you draw any correlation as to what that cause may be?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, we've certainly drawn some correlations. One of those being, several years ago, when China closed its borders, that, PET is a small percentage of what's processed at MRFs. Most MRFs tell me it's, in that 5 to 8% range of what they process. And, it's more around the fiber that they process. Well, when that got limited going to China and those type things, the amount of paper and fiber that we saw in our bales went up dramatically. So that's certainly one correlation we were able to draw.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Greg, very much.
Thank you.
So up on the agenda, we have two topics from our Division of Environmental and Financial Assistance. Do you two want to fight it out for who goes first?
We'll let Jessica have first.
Oh, me?
Yeah, because we're short.
Yeah, we can do ours really fast.
Well, I can do mine really fast.
Yeah.
Do you want us to do it?
Yeah, if you still have it.
Yep, sure.
Share here.
Aren't you glad it's not me doing it? There we go.
Thank you. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Jessica Dalzell. I'm with the Recycling and Sustainability Unit, and one of the platforms that we kind of supervise is the Ohio Materials Marketplace. I'm just going to give a brief overview on this and how it might be impactful to your organizations. So first, just a brief overview of what the Marketplace is. It's a free online platform allowing businesses and organizations to connect and find reuse and recycling solutions for their waste and byproduct challenges. So this is a free platform that Ohio EPA allows Ohio businesses, organizations, nonprofits, educational facilities, et cetera, to be a part of. The marketplace itself is operated by the U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development. We just oversee it and have a contract with them. Who is on the marketplace? It's a collaborative network of different individuals and businesses, organizations, like I mentioned. Typically, it's an organization that's looking to get rid of a material that finds a synergy with a business that's looking to source a feedstock material. Transporters are also popular on the site, as transportation tends to be the biggest logistical hurdle with the platform. And then we also like to work with our solid waste management districts and associations and councils to help market this platform. Those organizations are more familiar with their stakeholders and their needs. So we like to reach out to those different groups to see how we can partner with them and get the platform more recognized in their region. So traditionally, the linear economy is you produce something, it gets used, and then it gets tossed in the landfill. So the Ohio Materials Marketplace is looking to create a circular economy where a material can be reused after it's either been used or it didn't meet quality assurance, those kind of things. So how is this beneficial to you? The reuse of products allows for cost reduction, whether it be you're avoiding landfill tipping fees, or if you're sourcing a feedstock from the marketplace, you're avoiding cost. You can also charge fees on the marketplace. So if you're looking to sell a material, you can generate revenue from selling your material on the marketplace. Obviously, if you are looking to get rid of a material, rather than sending it to the landfill, it gets found on Marketplace and somebody sources it. You're diverting landfill, which allows you to assist your zero waste goals if you have those within your organization, if you have sustainability goals you're looking to meet. How has the Ohio Materials Marketplace Impact contributed to the circular economy here in Ohio? Marketplace members that have reported transactions say that they've saved over $300,000 by using the marketplace, whether that be they're sourcing their feedstock or they're avoiding landfill tipping fees. Additionally, we have 1,300 members, 1,300 members within Ohio, and then there are other state platforms like Washington, Tennessee, Michigan. So just in Ohio, we have those 1,300 members, and those 1,300 members have been able to save more than 130 million pounds of materials from being sent to landfill. So this is just a quick overview of what the website looks like. So this is the homepage. If you were to log on, you can see a list of available materials for your area. So at the top, you can't quite see it on this screenshot, but it allows you to search your city, your region, and you can identify materials based on how far they are from your central location. On the left-hand side, you can see all the categories that are available on the marketplace. So if you're looking for a specific item, you can search it by the category. Once you find an item that you're interested in, you click on it and it pops up that little pop-up. It's on the right-hand side. And that provides the photo of the material, a description of what's available, how much is available, and then any SDS information, any like hazardous waste information, all that good stuff is available on the listing. If you find out that you're interested in the material, you can click the Start Conversation button up in the right-hand corner, and you can communicate with the person that listed the listing, and they can provide any additional information you need, whether that be about transportation, hazardous waste info, all that good stuff. So once a transaction has occurred, if you found a material that you wanted, you reached out to the material owner, you worked out your transportation logistics, and the material's been exchanged. We ask that a transaction is reported through this form, and this is how we keep track of our data. So I just asked you some general info, like how much material was diverted, what was the material, are you the giver, the taker, and some of those similar questions. This is just a page of some traditional items that are transacted on the marketplace. Wood pallets are always on the marketplace, especially for businesses that aren't super large. They tend not to have a great way to get rid of their pallets, so they end up on marketplace. A lot of excess wood and shipping lumber as well. So lumber prices have been high lately, so we've been marketing that one like crazy, because if you don't need pristine lumber, this is a great place to source it, often for free as well. One of my favorite transactions that's taken place was a manufacturer put conveyor belts on the platform, and a youth horse camp sourced them to put in their horse stalls as mats for the horses, instead of buying specialized mats. So that ended up saving them a couple $1,000s. And like I mentioned, we are working on revamping our marketing, and this includes Marketplace Monday tweets that our social media puts out. So I know we talked about our Twitter following earlier, but this is just a couple examples of some of the tweets that have gone out recently, just trying to get more attention on the marketplace, because the more members that are involved, the more likely transactions can occur. Last but not least, we've been sending out monthly OHM newsletters to all of our members. So we've been updating our members on what new listings are available, how many new members joined, reminders like updating your listing if it's been on there for a couple of months. That way the information is all up to date. And then at the bottom of the newsletter, it advertises a couple of new listings that were posted during that month, just to get a little bit more attention onto some of the listings that are on the marketplace. And I didn't mention at the beginning, but if you are not already a member and you are interested, you can feel free to chat in your email, and I will send you an invitation link. Or if you're here in person, I have a pamphlet that I can give you. And I sped through that real quick so the rest of my team can do their presentation. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them now or later.
We do just have one question. One of our members had asked, is there a cost to do a transaction?
Yeah, sure thing. So it's a free platform. You don't have to pay anything to join. So just existing on the platform is free. Some items do have a fee. So like there are a couple on here that are like $1 per ton or $5 per ton, you know. So it's really up to the discretion of the person posting the material. And that's definitely something that could be negotiable. Like that's something that you can work out with the other member. I would say that typically the cost is just associated with working out the logistics of getting the material. So it might just be to cover the transportation. So if it was a material that you could pick up, they might be willing to waive that cost.
So there's no transaction cost through the actual marketplace. This is between the parties that are
Correct,
exchanging.
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Can you scroll back to the graphs that showed the transaction tonnage and cubic yards? I'm amazed that organic chemicals is such a huge percentage of that. You think about, not only is it diversion from landfill, but the cost those companies would have to properly treat their hazardous waste and stuff with millions of dollars that are saved by those companies. Curiosity of like a number of transactions and how they worked out, as well as looking at pounds and cubic feet, like if organic chemicals were also high on that list as far as.
Yeah, that would actually be interesting. Our transaction spreadsheet isn't sorted by category, so that would be something I would have to take a look at. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think they tend to come in large quantities, which is.
Some of the past have been bulk because they're like off spec or overstock, or the company doesn't need them. So it could be like a carboy or drum. So like a few transactions could really move the needle. Yeah. But like Jessica said, we have to go back and look. It's been online for 5 years. So it's like we just passed the 5-year anniversary back in April. So.
And as an example, I just looked up the organic chemicals listings, and let's see, organic peroxide was just posted recently for Ohio, and it's for just about 4,000 pounds of organic peroxide. So
the number of transactions might not be quite as many.
Yeah, usually large quantities.
Yeah.
It brings up an interesting point about your value proposition of $300,000. It seems just a little off.
Yeah, and so I briefly touched on all of our data comes from those transaction reports that we ask our members to fill out. So a lot of times it's estimates, and we have no way of actually verifying how much their landfill tipping fees would have
I think
been.
that number is really low.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I really think that's a undersell because there's a lot of hidden costs and, yeah, it's a good point.
That's what I was getting at. Maybe there's, in the survey, maybe it's, would this have been disposed of or not? Just to
Yeah.
answer yes or no, because you guys have some general numbers that you could plug into that, whether it's hazardous waste or otherwise. And not that I think we should inflate the number, but that number's too low.
Yeah, I don't disagree. with
They
you.
were trying to, originally, we were looking at the WARM model, you know, from UCPA and different ways to try to calculate it. But there are some changes coming down the road with the platform, and I think there's gonna be the ability to hopefully collect more data and even talk about looking at carbon, you know, and other measurement, metrics that would help like sell, like, oh, you know, oh, this is wood, it's not worth anything. Actually, it is when you look at like the management cost, the landfill cost, transportation cost, like your upfront cost of purchasing it. So, you know, that's probably the next phase for the marketplace. It's a slow process.
So US Business Council for Sustainable Development is who operates the form that we use for the transaction report. And they are switching the platform over to a different company right now. So we're kind of just in this limbo as we wait for it to be completely converted. And hopefully we get to be able to do some of these updates that will allow it to be more user-friendly and also data-friendly.
I have a quick question. On the one slide, it showed like Austin, material marketplace and so on.
Yeah.
Are those links then on?
The image that you were referring to is just screenshots of the logos of each of those. But Austin has its own marketplace.
Are we linked?
They are all available on the same, so I don't think you can see it from where you are, but at the top here, there is a button you can click for Ohio, for Michigan, for Ontario. So you can peruse the other sites as well.
Austin was the first, like, program when we were the first state. Austin, so, but, yeah.
Are there other questions for Jessica? Thank you for presenting on the marketplace. We appreciate it. And last but not least, we'll talk about our grant program update, which we had moved from earlier in the agenda. So Dave.
All right, I'm holding my presentation. Let me know if you guys see it. It's thinking.
The Wi-Fi is running real slow, Jeff. Maybe I'll get it up faster for you.
If I see it on the big screen, does that mean everybody sees it?
If I share it.
Oh, I've got it. I'm sharing. I got it up right now. If you share screen, yep.
Okay.
It should be. I see it.
Maybe. It's chugging.
All right. I know we only got 5 minutes, so.
And Dave and I can't even say good morning in 5 minutes, so we'll do our best to get us out of here on time.
This is just real quick. I believe April Stevens, our supervisor, had given update at the last MAC meeting. So just a quick update of the grant program and kind of where we are. The good news is, you know, we were able to meet with the director back in the end of May and make our recommendations based on our technical review team. And we had, just a reminder, 103 total applications came in for $7.5 million. And what we awarded, and we're working on finalizing. So the press release, even though we've heard from Lou, you know, Becca, we've heard some, you know, projects that you guys already know have been funded, but we're kind of waiting for our public information center to send out the final news release before we forward everybody. And that should be going out this week. But we've awarded 87 total projects for just a shade under $6 million. We were able to do that, of course, because we went to the controlling board and we were able to get an additional $2 million in spending authority, which also helped. We referenced earlier in the meeting today, the special assistance grant with the drop-off recycling. And so we were able to get additional funding, and also for another grant, special assistance grant, that our project then we're able to talk about in a sec. Just a quick highlight. Again, this isn't like all the projects, all 87 projects, but Ernie mentioned it. We had 2 communities come in with our new curbside contamination category, you know, for the curbside and utilizing toolkit. I think I can say it was Bexley and Hamilton, Ohio. So there was two that come in, and we're excited to see how that goes. Hamilton is cool because they've run a program before, Anna Fair Flag with Butler County. And then as you can see, it's a nice diverse snapshot of curbside expansion, some drop-off projects, always litter cleanup and tire amnesty. That's very important. And some MRF expansions. And then just some general equipment and, scrap tire also came in. We had 3 scrap tire processors come in, and also some paving and engineering projects. So we actually had a decent amount of a higher level of scrap tire applications this year, which was encouraging. That some years we don't always have that. And when we get the press release out, we'll make sure we send it directly to the MMAC so you guys can see the list, and they'll break it out by EPA district office. So it's like our 5 districts. Real quick thing about we're already, even though Marie and Terry and the RSU teams have been working hard on all the behind the scenes grant administration stuff for 2022, getting the grant agreements done and all behind the scenes stuff that I don't have the patience to listen to, but Marie and Carrie do. We're already starting the 2023 grant schedule. We're already starting to plan the online grant application. And here's just a snapshot of the schedule. Starts in November. Again, rinse, wash, repeat, as we say. The grant starts there every year. And I'm going to jump to Marie real quick. And Marie, you can have a slide here and talk about one last little slide before we wrap up.
Our director reached out to us and said, hey, I'd like to start a program for water bottle recycling equipment in schools. So we started off with a quick little phase 1, we like to call it, where we went with an application, a paper application. Really was online, meaning they forwarded it to us through email, but it was a Word document. In the first week, we reached 59 applications. So we're way over what we anticipated receiving in the very beginning. We're very excited about the program. We do hope, the good news is that we hope to open it up in the Recycle Ohio grant next year for 2023. Right now, we opened it up through Ohio K through 12 schools. And again, we hope to, put it in the Recycle Ohio grant application program so that they can come through that normally as other applications have to do. But to give you a little bit of background about it, the purpose was to purchase and install bottle refilling stations. It is for the equipment only. The maintenance and the upkeep and the installation will be up to the school district to do. There was no match. We gave them up to $5,000 per school or $10,000 per district. And the reason that we limited it that way is we didn't want a one large school district to come in and kind of evaporate all the money. So we decided to limit it just to see what kind of information, what kind of feedback we would get. And it was very, very in a 2-week period. We did reach out through a publication with the Ohio Department of Education that sent out emails to 63,000 Ohio educators. They were public schools, superintendents, teachers, maintenance workers. And as you can see, in 2 weeks, we got back a whole bunch of applications. So we're really excited about that. Again, it was open to public and private K through 12 schools. The eligible cost is for the refilling stations and related outreach and education. Funding, again, it was $5,000 per school or $10,000 per school district, and they have 12 months to complete the projects. We hope that they get them done during the summer while school is out. That was kind of our initial thought. We are giving them 100% up front. So when they apply, if they're awarded, we're going to give them all the money up front to get the information done. Then they have to submit how much it costs for the equipment and give us some invoices and stuff like that. So if they were given $4,000 and they only spent $3,800, we're going to go back and recoup that $200 and hopefully keep it set aside for additional programs. But that's pretty much it. Again, we are going to open it up. We're hoping to open it up. We've had a lot of feedback from colleges and universities, hoping that we could, fulfill their needs as well. And we're going to look at that when we put it in the Recycle Ohio grant application for 2023. But as Dave mentioned, that opens in November. So it's really not that far away that they can start applying through that application as well. And that pretty much wraps it up. The last slide we have there is people that you can reach out to if you have any questions regarding the program or any programs that we talked about here today, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
And I'd be remiss, because I know we're wrapping up. One last thing, an update. I think it ties into MMAC is we appreciate we had that MMAC subcommittee to talk about the market development grant and how we deal with government sponsors. And I want to give an update on that. I didn't have a slide for it, but I know we talked about it back in April. Like we, with the help of our team, and actually shout out to Marcy there. Like we asked some of our past sponsors the kind of help compose some frequently asked questions. And so that's the format we went with to send out to our government sponsors. That was a lot of feedback we've heard is, I know Steve gave some feedback on that too, about like, how can we build in like what a government sponsor needs to know ahead of time with an application process? And so one of our steps was to create an FAQ document and it ended up going on the web. So I'll share, it's on our webpage, which our awesome webpage, Chet Cheney. And it's actually, but it's a direct link we can send to, but the information is great. It kind of gives it information we have, like the role of the government sponsor, what we expect. And then we receive feedback from the likes of Marcy and her district and other government sponsors of kind of the things they've gone through, because there's internal steps they take that we're not really aware about, whether it's like a resolution or pre-approval. Beth knows this too. So it's like, there's just things you have to go through. And when we hear from people like, well, I want to sponsor them, like, well, what does it take? You know, a lot of times that's the first step, and then they can build it into their process. Well, with the goal eventually is like on July 1, if the project is funded, they can hit the ground running, you know, with a project, especially with a market development or scrap tire grant we sponsor. But, you know, it's 2 years, but 2 years go pretty quick, especially with right now with the supply chain issues and all that. So that's just an update on that. I'll share it. I was going to put it in the chat, but I'll send the link out. We're making progress on that. So it's based on all your recommendations. So
And just so Dave doesn't get the last word, thank you all very much
yeah, thank you.
for allowing us to present.
Yeah, okay.
We've reached the end of the agenda. We're at the public comment period. So I will just ask if any of our guests want to address Matt. Now would be the time to do it. If you do, just unmute yourself, please.
Speak up if we're doing it, otherwise we're done. All right. As a public body, we need a motion.
A second.
All opposed? Lunchtime. Have a good day. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.